Thank you very much. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We are speaking with you today from the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation. Comox has been a critical partner for us in finding a path forward on sewer conveyance, and we will continue to work very closely with them to protect archaeologically sensitive areas throughout this project. For those of you who have attended either of the sessions we held in November or March, thank you so much for continuing to be involved. For those that may be joining for the first time, we've hosted these sessions with residents in Area B, Lazo Road area, as a way to keep the community informed about parts of the sewer planning process that will have a unique impact in this area, and which we know will raise questions from you. I would like to acknowledge today, I think that your area director, Arzina Hamir, is joining us today, or will be shortly if she's not on right now. She takes an immense interest in your interests and your comments, and ensures that the Sewage Commission is aware of them. We're committed to keeping you informed and creating the space to address questions and concerns that are raised regularly. In early March, we talked to you about the selection of the conveyance route for a new sewer force main and provided an overview of our groundwater monitoring program. Today, we're back to share an update with you on the planning and design process, including more information to respond to your questions about safety, about the tunneled pipe. Our team will speak more about leak detection, environmental protection measures, and provide some examples of similar work that has been completed in other jurisdictions. In this slide, we show how we've come to this point, the decisions that have been made. Following public consultation in the fall and extensive technical analysis on the part of the liquid waste management planning process, the Sewage Commission approved a single phase of construction with tunneling through Comox and Lazo Hills as a preferred route earlier this year. We will review a map in a moment, and Chris will go through the various components of that map and the layout. It is residents of Courtenay and Comox that are served by the system, and as such, they will be responsible for the cost. If you are an elector, an approved elector within Courtenay and Comox, you will be able to participate in what was termed as an alternative approval process. It is estimated that this project will cost $73 million. The cost for borrowing of the portion that's required to be borrowed would be about $150 per year per household for 30 years, and it will be considered through an alternate approval process taking place in the next month. More details will be available, and the opportunity for those that qualify to be electors to sign a petition will be made available to the public. The implementation strategy will have the project complete by 2024, and a commitment to engage with Lazo Road area residents, including our groundwatering program and negotiations on statutory right-of-way where the tunnel is proposed throughout. I'll now hand this off to Chris LaRose, and he'll go through some of the details, and we'll all be available here to answer your questions.
Thanks, Russell. And good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, everyone. Marcy, are you going to pull up the, there we go. Great. So next slide. So thanks for participating today, everyone. So as Russell mentioned, we prepared a relatively brief presentation to update you on the project since our last open house in early March. There's not a ton of new information as we're currently procuring our engineering team for the project. So making that transition from the planning phase, which was a several-year process, to the execution phase, which is starting this year. So our new engineers will be in place by late June, and we'll have a busy summer ahead of them diving into some key assessments, including finalizing the horizontal directional drilled alignment, which is a key input to the statutory right-of-way negotiation. So first, a brief update on the selected conveyance solution. So on February 23rd, just before the last virtual open house for the Lazo area, the Sewage Commission approved the conveyance solution that's summarized on this slide. So the route combines cut and cover construction, so trenching, with directional drilling used to tunnel through the heights of land at Comox and Lazo Hills. So on the bottom of this slide, you can see a graph which shows the kind of side profile of the elevation that's between the 2 points. So the starting point at the Courtenay pump station on the left, and the treatment plant on the far right. And as you can see, the alignment is required to go up and over or through two heights of land. And so the trench would be dug with the pipe installed along the existing roadways for much of the route, but tunneling will be used to go through rather than over those two heights of land. So tunneling through those two heights of land will reduce the long-term costs and risk to the project. Without the tunneling, the maximum height of land is about 65 meters, which comes pumping over a height of land of that magnitude, particularly for wastewater, introduces some significant operational risks that can be avoided with the installation or the use of the tunneling. So the route includes upgrades, in addition to the conveyance, includes upgrades to the pump stations. So Courtney pump station, likely a replacement, upgrading of the KFN pump station and the Jane Place station, and then the tie-in at the treatment plant. And as noted previously, the two orange areas are the two HDDs, and identified as with more vagueness, just given that we haven't yet finalized the precise alignment. So that'll be done later this year when we've engaged our engineers. So next slide, please. So following up on the last slide, these are just some photos to kind of illustrate what I mean by trenching or cut and cover. So that top photo or series of photos just highlights what the trenching could look like for the cut and cover sections along Dyke Road and through the town of Comox, which, so this is a fairly large diameter pipe, so close to 1 meter in diameter, which requires a fairly significant excavation. And then also to keep the minimum depth above the pipe, plus the diameter of the pipe, it ends up being, you know, a minimum of between 2 and 3 meters and deeper where we are required to work around existing infrastructure like other utilities. And so any excavation of over 4 feet in depth either requires shoring, and that's what you can see very clearly in the center photo, and a little bit on the right photo, which is designed for the safety of the workers who are working in the trench, just to ensure that the walls don't collapse. So shoring or a combination of shoring and kind of beveling of the trench sides, so sloping down to an excavation, or just shored the entire height. So that's trenching. And then the bottom photo is the trenching obviously would go along the entire relevant sections. The HDD, the photo at the bottom is of a entry pit location, so where the drill rig will be set up at one end of the tunnel. So that's where the public will see the most activity. There'll be a lesser activity at the exit pit where the drill bit comes out at the other end. Drill bits are switched and then it's pulled back through. So quite a bit of impact on a small footprint, relatively small footprint compared to the trench and cover, as the bulk of the work is happening underground. Next slide, please. So following up on the selection of the conveyance solution in February, in April, the Commission approved the project implementation strategy, which included the decision to deliver the project in two separate contracts. And following the schedule that I'll highlight on my last slide. So what this slide highlights is it breaks down that project scope into the two pieces. So light blue for the cut and cover along Dyke Road, both tunnels and the pump station upgrades. So the bulk of the work would happen in that contract, and that would be delivered via design build. And then the green section, so just the cut and cover section through Comox, will be delivered separately as a design bid build. So design bid build, or DBB, is the traditional project delivery method where we hire an engineer, work with them to develop a 100% detailed design, and then put that out for tender, pick a contractor who then builds it exactly to the letter of the design. The DB, so the bulk of this project will be delivered. It's more of a progressive project delivery method where we first step, hire an owner's engineer. They will work with us to develop a statement of work or statement of requirements, which is kind of a performance-based specification for the project. And then that's used to hire a design build team. So instead of a DBB where the designer is hired separately, works for the owner and separately from the builder, under the DB, the designer and the builder partner up and work together to develop a design. So we're particularly keen to have those synergies between the designer and the builder for the tunneling and for the pump station upgrades, where it's going to be quite complicated to maintain operations while we undertake the works. Next slide, please. So, first of all, an update on the groundwater inventory, well inventory. So since we last spoke, we've been able to ascertain the location and depth of most wells in that swath of land where the HDB alignment could go. So that inventory work continues, and we'll be reaching out very shortly to a handful of residents to discuss installation of real-time groundwater quality and level data monitoring equipment. So that'll be on a handful of properties that are strategically located throughout the area to provide, so that monitoring equipment will be left in place from now until well after construction. So we plan to have a solid year of data captured prior to construction to establish a baseline against which future readings will be measured to confirm no impacts from construction and subsequent operation. So we definitely want to thank all residents who've participated in the groundwater well survey to date, and also acknowledge the concerns of those that have and have not so far. So over the past months, I've had numerous conversations with residents from across this area, and we certainly understand that there is serious concern about the potential impact on groundwater and property values. Next slide, please. My hope is that as we progress through the project and through these series of open houses and the additional assessments that are continually being done, that we can work to assuage these concerns, and partially by highlighting how extremely careful and robust our planning process and design process will be for this system. On the planning side, we've undertaken extensive consultation and really cast the net far and wide for a really wide scope of analysis throughout that process, which is kind of highlighted or summarized in that timeline across the top of this slide. We had an increasing level of assessments as the options were shortlisted. So we did at the beginning start with a large number of options on a long list. As these were shortlisted down to eventually 2, we did a successively more in-depth level of analysis for each of these, guided and informed by the input from the wide stakeholder group that were engaged in our technical and public advisory committees, and all of the respective advisors that were engaged to support that process. So those shortlisted options, were assessed on geotechnical, seismic, hydrological, flood-proofing, a significant level of due diligence behind the selection of the horizontal directional drilling as the optimal tunneling solution. And then finally, a very rigorous value engineering process that was accomplished at the late last year, which brought in a whole separate team of experts from around the continent to review all of the key assumptions and methodologies that went into this planning process. And looking forward to the design process, the CBRD has the clear incentive to ensure delivery of a pipe that doesn't leak. We have the expertise and the project management and project delivery expertise and capacity to deliver a project like this. From a seismic perspective, just wanted to reiterate that that this infrastructure is required to be designed and installed to survive a very large seismic event, much larger than the big one that is referred to by local residents, which is roughly a 300-year return. What this will be designed to is that 2,475-year return seismic event, and built to withstand that. The third bullet there, we've selected that GB project delivery method for the bulk of the project, including the horizontal directional drilled section, of which is most relevant to this area, in part to ensure that we continue to have multiple engineering teams that are involved in the process and providing input to decrease the likelihood that any one team could miss something important that could affect the integrity of the project. And throughout the process, there will be extensive quality control, assurance, and testing processes in place to ensure that what finally ends up in the ground is as robust as possible. Next slide, please. So our work assessing options for leak detection continues. At the moment, the approach taking shape is to include access ports at either end of the tunneled sections to allow for insertion of a real-time leak detection system once that technology has advanced sufficiently. And in the meantime, run the smart ball device that we've used extensively through the pipe on a regular basis to listen for leaks. We've used smart ball extensively over the past years on our sewer infrastructure as well as our water infrastructure. And we have a high level of confidence in this well-demonstrated technology. It can pick up and triangulate on very, very small leaks. So in terms of frequency, it's likely to start off at a higher frequency until the pipe has been operated for, say, for a full year. So maybe that could be on a quarterly basis, and then on a less frequent basis after that, once the pipe has been operating and demonstrated. As discussed on an earlier slide, groundwater monitoring will continue post-construction and will provide a kind of a second line of defense, so to speak, for a leak, as the precursors for wastewater can easily be picked up in groundwater. I think throughout this process, I recognize a lot of the names on this meeting. I think I've clearly conveyed my thoughts on how unlikely I believe a leak from this pipe is, but I understand the concerns, and I definitely acknowledge that a leak is not impossible. So to ensure that the CBRD always has the equipment, expertise, and processes in place to allow for an expedited response to a leak, now and into the distant future when our successors are in these positions and we're no longer around, staff will be developing and bringing forward to the Commission for approval later this year a policy requiring these preparations and practices be in place in perpetuity. And so that piece forms one element of our broader commitment to the Lazo Hill residents, that we'll do everything possible to design and install a pipe that won't leak, to implement leak detection and monitoring to ensure a leak is picked up as soon as possible, having the equipment and processes in place to ensure an expedited repair, and then finally making good on any impacts to groundwater, which could include provision of temporary water, drilling of new wells, or even facilitating the installation of a community water system in the area if the leak was to that extent. Next slide, please. So yeah, a little bit more on experience in other communities. So throughout the multi-year planning process that's brought us to this point, the CBRD has been supported by expert technical, financial, and commercial advisors, those including WSP, Deloitte, extensive market sounding of key consultants and contractors, and as I mentioned, that rigorous value engineering process. So through this extensive work and the wealth of knowledge and experience that they've brought to the table, we've become very confident in the proposed HDD approach to going through Lazo Hill. At no point has any consultant or contractor raised a concern that this approach strays from what has been done successfully before and elsewhere, or about our ability to deliver a robust pipe system. I've also been in contact with my counterparts at Metro Vancouver and the Capital Regional District to learn more about a couple of their relevant projects, which are kind of pictured below, both of which run under sensitive marine environments. And so the Capital Regional District was a large diameter HDD project underneath their harbor, connecting the James Bay area with their new treatment plant at McLaughlin Point. And then the Metro Vancouver project is ongoing and crossing under the Fraser River to connect communities on the north shore of the river with the newly expanded Northwest Langley plant. Yeah, so however, in acknowledgement of the concerns expressed by residents in March and earlier, we have initiated a thorough study by WSP of other similar projects. So we've again cast the net far and wide, come up with a long list of 18 similar projects that they're going to shortlist to around 12 for detailed study and summary in a document that we'll be sharing with you and with the public once it's complete this summer. And we'll be providing an overview of that work at the next open house, and hopefully again to further assuage some of the concerns about the proximity of this pipe with the drinking water aquifer. Next slide, please. And finally, the last slide before the final schedule slide, and some further details about the statutory right-of-way negotiation process. So over the past 2 months, we've procured and engaged a property agent who will act on our behalf as the single point of contact with property owners for the statutory right-of-way negotiation that will start this fall. So Jim Riches, he is the individual. He has a wealth of experience in this field, and he's already started to assist us in drafting the statutory right-of-way agreement that will form the basis or the starting point for negotiation with property owners. So once the owner's engineers are on board and they've finalized the HDD alignment, Jim will be reaching out to property owners to begin the negotiations, and you should expect that to be in early November. And then we're hoping to finalize the statutory right-of-way negotiations in about 3 months, or by February of next year. And finally, the last slide, please. So yeah, next steps. So this is a very high-level schedule, a high-level summary of the more detailed schedule that was attached to the April project implementation strategy staff report that went to the Sewage Commission on April 13th. So ongoing groundwater survey and monitoring, as I mentioned, that's ongoing, and we hope to begin the monitoring shortly with those handful of properties that are scattered strategically around the area, and that will last through to post-construction. The alternative approval process. So as Russell mentioned at the beginning, this is a very expensive project for the service, coming in estimated at $73 million. Roughly 50 million of that is required to be borrowed, with the rest coming from reserves. So that borrowed amount requires authorization. So that will be done through an AAP process that will be largely complete in June and then into very early July. Planning and preliminary design assessments, that's underway and will really pick up once the owner's engineer is in place in late June or early July, and be completed by November, when we hope to finalize the scope for the project. Our next meeting, we're flagging, say, early September for the next open house with the community, by which point we hope to have quite a bit more to talk about. November, finalize the project scope, including the horizontal directional drilled alignment through the Comox and Lazo Hills. And then, like I mentioned, those 3 months that are being allocated for negotiation of the right-of-way, statutory right-of-ways, and then all lining up for procurement of the design build contract starting in spring or early summer of 2022, and looking to begin construction in early 23 and complete it by fall of 2024. Yeah, so that's it from me, but I'm very happy to take your questions now. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chris, for going through all of that with us. We do have some questions in the chat, and I might just leave that screen up there while we do the questions, because I think that next steps, the dates are good to look at while we're talking. So the first question, dive right in. Will any of the entry and exit sites for the tunneling be on private land?
Yes. Other than, so there's two tunnels, each with an entry and exit pit. On the Comox Hill alignment, the exit pit will be in ministry or town road right of way on the Comox Hill, and then the other end will be on quasi-private property, possibly at the St. Joe's Hospital site, and on the large Lazo Hill HDD. There is still some assessment to be done to confirm the HDD alignment, not just the precise alignment, but also what configuration, 1 versus 2 tunnels. But yes, the short answer is that tunnel will involve some use of private land, and then also CVRD property at the treatment plant, which is where the exit pit is likely to be for one of those tunnels.
Okay. I think because we have a small group and some straightforward questions, I'm literally just going to read them out of the chat as we go. So how will the groundwater interest of property owners who do not have wells be protected to the same extent of those who presently have wells?
I guess, I mean, in the same manner. I mean, maybe I might ask a clarifying question on that one. Do you, I mean, I guess our approach is to certainly making use of existing wells for monitoring, but we're working to protect the groundwater for the entire area, regardless of whether a property currently has a well or not. But I'm not sure if I captured that question.
Sure. So the person could expand on that, and I know we've got other CVRD staff who might want to chime in, but I'll go on to the monitoring because there's some questions about that. Will the well monitoring results be made public through the monitoring process?
That's a good question. I think we have suggested to residents that it is an option to keep in confidence the results of the well monitoring that's done on the property. So I'm not sure what the latest is on that, but whether it's identified or kind of correlated with a specific property or not, the results will be summarized in a form that will definitely be publicly available. It just may not be tied to specific properties, just given the confidentiality concerns, but the cumulative results will definitely be shared as is the rest of the information that's being developed as part of the planning and design of the process, the project.
Okay. That's great. Thanks, Chris. We've got questions about the AAP, the alternate approval process. Will Area B residents have an opportunity to participate? And I know we've got Russell here. Yes, absolutely.
Sure.
Go ahead.
I can address that one, and thank you for the question. The alternative approval process is required in order to permit the borrowing that's required for the project. And because it is about borrowing, it has an impact to tax or ratepayers. So it is only those people that are qualified electors within the city of Courtenay and the town of Comox that would qualify. An area resident in Area B wouldn't naturally qualify, but if they did own property and qualified in as a elector, they may be able to participate in it. And again, the purpose of the alternate approval process is to permit the borrowing required in order to pay for the project.
That is an excellent overview of how that works. Thank you, Russell. We've got some questions about the right-of-way agreements. So question, will the draft agreement be shared publicly with all who will be approached for agreements? Interesting question, yeah.
I guess is the key part there shared publicly? I think the intention, like I mentioned in the presentation, the agreement will form the basis, the starting point for the negotiation with each property owner. So yeah, so yes, the answer is yes, that each property owner that will be working with towards a statutory right of way will be privy to that agreement, right from the very start.
Right, okay. Question about the wells, actually the pipe in proximity to the wells. So how close to existing wells will the pipe be? I guess that might vary, but just in a general sense, can you give an estimate or an idea?
Yeah, so certainly. So I guess the short answer is that there will be a minimum distance, but we haven't nailed that down yet. So we are working with our advisors to develop that minimum distance from existing wells, but we don't have that number yet.
Okay, I think I think that's all of the questions I'm seeing in the chat. If I've missed anyone, please chime in. That's sometimes possible, but we have a smaller group today, so I could also offer the option. The slides and the maps are quite interesting. We could loop back through, Chris, if you think that might be of interest to people, or is there anything we haven't covered that you wanted to expand on in any more detail? Well, we do have the time. All right, we've got a few more people jumping in the chat with some questions. Asking about the project advisors. How are your advisors with respect to well proximity? I'm thinking that might be around, what's the advice on that? But again, maybe the questioner could expand, or Chris, do you have an idea of how to answer that?
Yeah, I think maybe they probably meant to write who are the advisors with respect to well proximity.
Thank
so
you. Yes.
I'll answer. Yeah, I'll answer that, and if that wasn't what was intended, then Mary Catherine can correct me. But so the relevant advisors there will be so GW Solutions, who we've been working with from the start on from the bringing the hydrological expertise. But then we're also key inputs to that process will be our technical advisors. For example, that work that I mentioned during my presentation that was commissioned from WSP to review in detail a solid sampling of other relevant projects. So one of the pieces that they're looking to learn from other contractors and local governments who have delivered similar project is detailed exactly like the one that's being asked about now. So it we'll be making the final decision on that, but it'll be informed with advice from several different advisors on our end.
That's great. It's been pointed out that I might have zipped through too quickly about the chat feature. If any of you in attendance are not seeing where to post your questions, at the bottom of your screen in the middle of the menu bar, if you hover your cursor there should be a white text box or a word bubble. And if you should see the word chat. If you click on that, your chat box should appear. But perhaps we've just had such a great presentation that all the questions have been answered by Chris and the team. I don't want to rush things too much though. It's 12:40 now. And okay, we've got some more here in the chat. Chris, there's a question, if you can clarify how and what opportunities are there for Area B residents to comment or vote on the project. So we heard about the AAP and how that works, or perhaps doesn't work for Area B, but are there other opportunities for those residents to engage or comment or have an input or have their voices heard around this?
Yeah, I can comment on that. The liquid waste management plan that has got us to where we are today has been an extensive public process that has involved open houses, workshops like this, and participation on the liquid waste management plan advisory committee by residents of Area B and other interests. So there's been a ton of work up to date, but if you are an Area B resident and you still want your questions answered, that's why we have these workshops, and we'll have another one of these tomorrow. And as Chris said, we will continue to engage with you throughout this process. If you feel that your comments, concerns, or otherwise haven't been addressed, by all means, please write us a letter and express those. We'll share your comments with the Sewage Commission, who will be interested to hear from you. But it is really through these formats where we provide the opportunity for dialogue, and it is provided to everybody to see, and then to also view these workshops through our website, which will continue to be available to the public, and you can pass those on to your residents or neighbors that haven't been able to participate.
That's great. In fact, I'll pull up, as we answer, there's some more questions, but I'll just pull up the screen with the email that is the best way to share, not just ask your questions, but voice your opinions on the project and the process, of course. So there is, if that's helpful, communications@comoxvalleyRD.ca. I'll just leave that up there and I'll go back to the chat because we did have a question about, for Chris, does Ministry of Environment endorse the consultants you have retained for purposes of its regulations?
Yeah, so the MOE doesn't specifically endorse consultants, but we undertake rigorous selection, competitive selection of our consultants for projects of this magnitude. So in order to qualify to even respond or to be evaluated for this work, these consultants must have a solid track record of delivering similar projects. And of course, we're working with professional engineers that are a self-regulated profession within British Columbia. So certainly no concerns whatsoever about, or there should be strong confidence in the results of our competitive selection process.
Good to know, of course. Well, that's okay. We're getting some, yeah, so the same question around public health. So I assume meaning island health. So would the health authority, do they endorse the consultants, or you might have answered that in your answer, Chris, but.
Yeah, it's similar, except health is even less involved in a project of this type. They had a more significant level of involvement with our ongoing water treatment project, because provision of clean drinking water is clearly falls under their mandate. So less involvement by health on this project, and similar to my response regarding the ministry. They don't endorse specific consultants. They rely on the provincially mandated self-regulation of the professional engineering profession.
That's great. I'm just checking for any emails, any questions that have come by emails, and I think we're out of questions for today. As I mentioned, the email address is a great one. If there are things that you've thought of after today's session, please send them in, because we will be doing a similar version tomorrow at a different time slot, 4 to 5 p.m. I believe. Feel free to join us again if you like, but the content will be the same as we've gone through today. So seeing that we've covered some great questions, seeing that this recording will be available to watch again on the CVRD site if needed, and Seeing that we do have an email address, again, I'll pop it up in case there are things that come to you after we sign off. I think that is a wrap. Great timing. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Russell, and the project team. Thank you to all of you who have made time on a sunny day to join us here and learn more. We appreciate your time, your interest, and all of your questions. They do become a log of engagement for the project. So with that, I will sign off and wish you all a good afternoon. Thank you.